Hey folks, Gary here. So today we're going to be doing something obviously very different than we normally do. And today is something very special. Who I have here right here, I want to introduce you to my very good friend, Mike Laird. Mike was with me with the initial invasion going into Iraq in our scout platoon. We were in the sniper section together. We went to sniper school together, which we'll talk about all those things. And I'm going to have him introduce himself a little bit. But basically, the last time I saw Mike was over 15 years ago. It was actually May 2007, someone reminded me. And so it was almost exactly 15 years ago. So I finally was in town nearby where he lives. So I wanted to make a point to catch up. But I actually linked up with him yesterday. And, it was the first time that we'd really talked about that time, or at least really the first time I talked about our time in Iraq together. And I basically walked away from that conversation just stoked. We were able to catch up. I got to meet his family, who I hadn't met before, his wife and his kids. Just a great time. I had dinner over with his family, his parents and his brother and their kids. I left here over the moon. And, everything that we talked about as I was reflecting on everything, as I was driving back to my hotel, the main thing was, the big takeaway for me was how positive all the conversations that we had were, those very formative experiences and interactions that, just are going to be with me for the rest of my life. And I started thinking about how that is a message that really isn't heard when it comes to talking about Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think there's a lot of people out there that, both on the public side, but even on the former service or current service folks side, I think there's a lot of people that are a little discouraged about how things went down. We can get to the debate about, why we went and all those other things. But the point is that after reflecting on it all, number one, there's a hugely positive message. And number two, regardless of why we went there and how it ended and all this other stuff, I think ultimately, and even the blood and treasure that was lost over there, there's some really positive experiences that came out of there. And, I just want to say, I haven't ever said this to Mike, but, I want to say it here and I want to say it to him that, Mike was one of those people, the most influential, impactful people that I met in the military. And I consider him a friend. I love him. I admire him. I respect him. I could go on all day about, what Mike means to me now, what our interaction together overseas meant, and how that still carries with me. And I'll talk a little bit about why that is, and some of, this is a guy of extreme character, of extreme morals. And he was, to this day, he's one of those guys that I continue to think about. And I was just telling him the other day, if I'm in a moral dilemma, I probably not often enough, but often I think, hey, what would Mike do in this situation? He's a man of God, and he's just a good. And here's the thing: is like that's not just my experience. When we were in the military, one of the things just watching and observing, everybody that Mike was around felt that way. He's a natural leader. People are drawn to him. He's as selfless as they get. He was vastly more mature than I was, and most of the people, for sure. He's just one of those guys that will forever be on my mind, and just had a huge impact on me overall. And I just want you to know that.
Thanks, Gary.
And so, anyways, we started talking about some of the things, the crazy things. And one of the cool things is when I got here, he had a couple of gifts for me. Number one, when we went to sniper school, this is actually my data book from sniper school when we went. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I think this is how he got through sniper school. He stole my.
Yeah, that's true.
But this is legit.
I also stole your notes.
So that was 2003, right? Late 2003 that we went to sniper school. And we'll talk a little about that. But what I want to do right now is let Mike. So we ended up halfway through the deployment, basically, with the initial invasion to Iraq. Mike was in Charlie Company. I was in Delta Company. And we both ended up in scout platoon and ultimately the sniper section and going to sniper school together and running missions together and spend a lot of time together and getting to know each other. But I'd actually like to hear from you, kind of what you were doing prior to enlisting, and then kind of everything that happened before, our paths crossed in Scout Platoon.
Yeah. So kind of I think interesting, back in that day, they had a buddy program. So you could enlist under this program called the buddy program, where you could go with a buddy and you were guaranteed to go to basic training together, and then also the same duty station and brigade. And so I joined up with my younger brother under the buddy program and went to basic training. That was very interesting, going to basic training with a brother, literally sharing the same bunk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So his name's Mark, and so he was roster number 145 on the top bunk, and I was roster number 146 on the bottom bunk. And so drill sergeants had a lot of fun with that. But prior to making that decision, I went to Grand Canyon University. I graduated from Grand Canyon University. I was playing baseball there, and my younger brother was also playing baseball there. And after 9/11, it really upset us and had a significant impact on our lives. And so we've just been wrestling with, what do we do with that? I believe in this country, I want to serve God. I want to serve this country. I want to do something. So we're just really struggling with that. My brother Mark still had eligibility to play baseball, but we felt so strongly about it that I remember it to this day. We were fly fishing up in northeastern Arizona. And I don't even know if you know this. We're fly fishing up in northeastern Arizona and just praying about it with my brother. We're on tube floaters and catching trout. And we just came to the decision, like, when we get back from this trip, we're going to go enlist. And so we did just that. We got done with our fishing trip and went down to the recruiting office and signed up under the buddy program to just enlist infantry. And the recruiter was like, you have a four-year degree, like, why are you enlisting? And I said, well, I'm going with my brother, buddy program. He actually could have gone officer 2 route because he had enough college to be able to do that. And so, yeah, that's kind of what was our decision, is we just felt called to serve God and country and sign up. So we did. But we were regular infantry, so just a line dog, regular infantry. And
let me stop. I'm curious to know how your parents reacted to that.
They didn't like it. I think they were proud, but they were just like, why, you don't need to do this, but I respect that you guys want to do it. So I think our time in Iraq deployed doing two tours each, I think aged my parents greatly.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Having both your sons, I can't even, if my 2 sons went off to war, I can't even imagine. So that's, yeah.
They're incredible parents and still are incredible grandparents now. I'm so pumped that you got to meet them because they've heard so much about you. And Gary, I appreciate the kind words that you embellish greatly about me.
Embellish it all. Maybe I undersold it. I had a lot more to say, but I couldn't. No, couldn't bring it out.
But both of us had a similar experience where we were in a line platoon and got recruited, I guess, to come to Scouts, because typically you do a tryout.
I think I begged.
Well, I got lucky. I literally was right place, right time.
Same here.
It was just, you couldn't draw it up any better. But I was regular line platoon, and our LT was going to the green to gold program. So he was formerly, I think, an E6, and he was taking some college, and so he was in that program to transition into being an officer. I think it was called green to gold. Mm-hmm. And he found out that I had a 4-year degree and I enlisted, and that just blew him away. He just thought that was ridiculous, and why would you do that? And so he was kind of just thought that was interesting. And I was also older. So because I graduated, I was probably one of the older guys, and he liked me. Well, he then went over to be the platoon leader for the Scouts, and they had a spot that opened up, and he liked me enough to ask me to come. So he literally recruited me over, and I don't know if they did an interview. I don't even know what your process was like.
Yeah, so I was pretty similar, a little bit different. Basically, I was actually working. I had a career going. I was the junior vice president of a sales company at the time. I was real young. I got into sales, excelled at it, did really well, and then I kind of got embedded into this real young, 17 is when I started working there. And by the time I was 18, I was basically made junior vice president of this company. And then I ended up opening another company. By then I had a wife and a kid. And then, and to be honest with you, I was very unfulfilled. It got to a point where I knew I was in that career and I felt stuck in that career, and I knew it wasn't for me. I knew I wasn't happy. And then 9/11 happened, and I was just angry. I'm just a young, immature, angry dude. And all I knew is I wanted to go overseas. And I didn't know anything about the military. Like, I went to the recruit. Well, so first of all, I went to the recruiting station. It was the Sunday following, I think 9/11 was on a Tuesday. It was the following Sunday. I had worked up the courage basically to go, and I was going to go Marine Corps. All my family was basically Marine Corps. And I literally thought the only time you went to the Army is if you couldn't make it in the Marine Corps. Like, it was like the dropout program for them. So I went up on a Sunday, not really thinking about it, and to just go talk to somebody and figure out what the options were. And I went up to the Marine Corps door, tugged on it. There was nobody in there. And there was a door, couple doors down the row a little bit. It was open, and there was a lady underneath there. And she's like, "Hey, you thinking about joining the military?" And I looked up, and above her it said Army, and I was like, "Not the Army." And she's like, "Hey, well, why don't you just come check it out real quick and see what we offer? We give bonuses. You'll get a cash bonus. You get to choose your MOS. The Marine Corps doesn't do any of that." And I didn't know much about the military, but I knew about recruiters. I knew they were liars, right? So I was like, "All right, I'll come over there and see what you got." She's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just want to fight. Like, I don't know what." And there happened to be another guy there, and that's why she was there. And she was in civilians, but she was a recruiter. And there was another guy there, and he was former infantry and was re-enlisting. He's like, "Bro, you want to be infantry?" I'm like, "Well, okay, cool. What's infantry?" Like, I had no clue. So they kind of go over some options with me and talk about a bonus. And I'm like, "Well, you know what? No matter what, I'm going to come back tomorrow. I'm going to talk to the Marine Corps recruiter and see what they offer and see if you're lying." So I remember walking into the Marine Corps recruiter the next day, and they're like, "You thinking about joining up?" And this guy was just so over the top. He was like the stereotypical Marine, like, "Oh." He's like, "Come on, boy, you thinking about joining up?" And I was like, "Well, do you guys give bonuses? I still have a family." She's like, "Your bonus is to get to be a Marine." I'm like, "Okay, well, that doesn't pay my bills." I was like, "Well, do I get to choose my MOS?" He's like, "The Marine Corps is going to choose it for you." I'm like, it doesn't really sound a whole lot very appealing to me. So, long story short, I ended up in the Army. Same thing. Was infantry. It ended up at the 101st at the Rakasans after basic training, and then started in Delta Company, which was a heavy weapons company. So we basically rode around in trucks. And there again, I found myself in another position. I hated that place. It wasn't what I was going to. I thought it was cool. The idea that we're going to work with heavy weapons and tow missiles and the Madus and Mark 19, and all that was cool. But it was just a different mindset, and it wasn't the mindset that I was looking forward to. So long story short, we ended up moving. We ended up deploying. I think it was like we left in, I don't remember the actual invasion date.
February-ish? We
head over in February. I want to say it was like early March. We ended up launching into Iraq. We moved from Kuwait up into Al-Hala. And then ultimately we ended up we hit Al-Hala, then went to Baghdad, and then ended up with 101st. We ended up taking over Mosul and Tal Afar. And so we ended up meeting, Mike and I, in Tal Afar. And we were Delta Company and HHC, Scout Platoon, and the mortars we were all in this fort. And that's what we had taken over in Tal Afar. And so we were co-located, and all I knew is that I wanted to get out of Delta Company. And we had the scout there, and I'm like, I remember talking to my squad leader. I was like, "Man, I'd love to go over to scouts. I think, they were real high speed. They were doing, PT every morning. They were hard charging." It was kind of the exact, very different than Delta Company, just a mindset. And so I started becoming friends with them, and I started doing PT with them, and long story short, they ended up asking me if I'd like to come over, and I was like, "Man, heck yeah, I would like to come over." So, that's how we ended up in Scout Platoon. I think you came over maybe like a few weeks after I did.
Yeah, it was a shock. So in the line platoon, everything was just by the book, wearing your body armor all the time, and I remember my first day at Scouts, I walk into the fort and I'm like, these guys are in flip-flops and
walking around with no shirts.
And I'm thinking, this is Great.
We thought we were SF.
Yeah.
We did. It was definitely a different, it was that play hard, work hard mentality. Like, we expected to be the top of our game. The PT standards were, basically you better max out your PT test. As far as, technical knowledge, everything from battle drills, everything else. We trained hard, we worked hard. But then we relaxed and threw on some flip flops and walked around there like we owned the place, and all the other companies didn't like us very much for that. Yeah. So we ended up in Scout Platoon, and I think Laird and I, we immediately knew that we wanted to go over to the sniper section. There was a couple guys leaving sniper section. I don't remember if we had any specific talks about that, you and I. I know we both expressed interest. I don't remember a specific talk about that, but the funny thing is so suddenly they're having this, we get word of this sniper school that they're offering. And it was the first sniper school in combat theater since Vietnam. So we're like, hey, we'd love to go with that, but I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so I think the Scout Platoon, a lot of those guys had gone to Afghanistan prior, right? Uh-huh. And so like right after 9/11, Operation Anaconda, I believe it was. And so a lot of those guys were wanting to get out. And so there wasn't a ton of guys that had enough retainability to go to a sniper squad. You needed at least 12 months of retainability to be able to go. And so those two spots open up. It was 2 per battalion. And we got selected, just another right place, right time thing.
Yeah.
I think I kind of got told that I'm going.
Yeah. So anyway, and the funny thing was, we were told, I know at the beginning we were told, hey, you're not going to get an identifier. This is not an identifier school. So we were kind of looking at this originally as like a train up. So we thought we'd go to this.
I remember that.
We'd go to this and understand that we weren't with, typically how this works is you end up in sniper section for a while, and then you'll get a slot for a school and eventually you go. So that whole time is a train up. Well, Laird and I were in the scout section. So we were just doing recon missions. And we'd done nothing on the sniper side. We knew that it was a bolt gun. I mean, that's basically what we knew on that side of it. And then, so they said that this is not identifier school. So I remember we collected up a bunch of ammo. We had a couple of the guys that were currently in the sniper section go over a few things with us, give us some notes, give us a real big crash course. And I'll tell you, tell me if you disagree with this, but sniper school, in my mind, once we got there, I realized it's so fast paced that you're not really there to learn. It's almost more like the test itself.
Yeah, you're there to test. I feel like every day I was going to go home.
Yeah.
I'm going to fail this. I don't know how to do it. Yeah. We have some of our notes, which is crazy, but we were taking notes like crazy because we were like, we don't know anything.
I 100%. Like there was no way that we were going to be able to pass this school. And so, we're there and just drinking from a fire hose, trying to take down every bit of information.
We almost didn't get our 50 cal rounds. I was thinking of that last night. Remember, we were like nervous because we were supposed to go pick up the 50 cal
Somehow
rounds.
we snagged some from the battalion, BSA, the battalion.
See, this
brigade
guy
staging
is
area.
a resourceful guy, and there's several stories that we can share to go into that. But I think you had something to do with squaring away our rounds.
I do remember I went around the brigade. It was the brigade staging area. It was another location, and I want to say that I talked some people out of 50 cal. I may have stolen some. I don't remember.
It literally was that first deployment when we first got over. It was the Wild West. It was just like the logistics hadn't caught up. People didn't know where things were. There was just no infrastructure hardly. And so this guy's here digging up 50 cal rounds out of somewhere.
Yeah, there's only one thief in the Army, and everybody else is trying to get their stuff back. That's what I go with. So yeah. So anyways, I remember this so clearly. We now meet up with some guy. He was like a E7 or E8 there at Brigade, and he's going to take us. Did we take a bird to Sinjar? I think we did.
I think that's right. Yeah.
So he's like our go-between. So whoever dropped us off at the Brigade staging area now hand us off to this guy. And I don't know, he was an E7 or E8, something like that. But anyways, and somewhere in between there, we managed to get enough 50 cal rounds because we didn't think we were going to have 50 cal. Come to find out, we didn't even qual on the 50 cal. I don't think we even actually qualled. We did like
I
fam.
don't know that we did.
I don't even remember. I'm sure we did, but I don't know that I remember actually shooting the 50 cal.
Go in there and find.
That's true. That's true. So I guess we did. We definitely did. Irregardless, which I know is not a word, but I like to use. So we fly to Sinjar and we get dropped off at this. It was the National Guard training unit, marksmanship unit, which those guys they were squared away. Apparently, all they did in that unit was shoot. They'd won the sniper competition many years in a row. They do a lot of competitions, both civilian and military competitions. They were really squared away. They were pretty impressive as far as their depth of knowledge and actual, even though the National Guard, and most of these guys were like former Ranger bat. I remember the only one name I remember, Sergeant Boatwright.
Was he a Marine?
No.
They had, that was interesting. They had cadre from all over.
They did. I know at least two of the cadre were former Marine Corps snipers. 2 or 3 of the guys were from Ranger Battalion. Anyways, squared away a bunch. But I remember sitting in that first brief, and Larry and I were sitting next to one another, and they're like, "Hey, when you pass this, if you pass this, you're going to get your B4 identifier with sniper." And we were like, suddenly, I don't know about Larry, but I know suddenly, like the world stopped, and that was now the most important thing, and so much pressure.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that if I had to pass, right? And it went from like, there's no way we're going to pass. We're just here to learn, kind of la-di-da-di. We're going to put forth our best effort and all that good stuff. But there wasn't a lot of pressure, right? Suddenly, there was a ton of pressure. And if I blew this chance, in my mind, in my immature mind at the time, I was like, man, we're going to go back and, oh God, they're going to never let us go back to sniper school. And, there's all this pressure on us. And some of that may have ended up being true. I don't know. But we had high standards in our scout platoon. Excuse me. We had high standards in scout platoon, and who knows what would happen. But suddenly.
It was from trial run to game time.
Like that. And that was. It got real serious real quick. And so what else?
We passed?
We did pass. We passed.
I don't know how. I literally thought every day I was going home like this. Right?
Yeah, so it was so, and here's the thing. We actually, the whole time, we were doing really well. It wasn't, there was definitely some days. So first of all, one of the points that they made, I just remember the first day that we were out there zeroing, and we have like a couple cadres over here talking to us about zeroing, and we have another set of cadre off on another berm, and they're shooting at targets. I remember how they had like 8 targets stacked up next to each other. And what it was the wind. So we're in Sinjar Valley. It's like an average. I was just going through our dope books. Like there's like 35 mile an hour winds, 40 mile an hour winds. And they were like, look guys, like we couldn't even get on target. We couldn't get in paper. Just talking about the winds. They were shooting at targets at 400 yards. And they were having a hard time even seeing where the rounds were impacting. So they stacked up targets one another so they could see the windage. Right. And it was like 5 or 6 targets. They were aiming at one. It was like 4 or 5 targets down the road that the rounds were impacting. It was some serious winds. And they're like, hey, most of the time at sniper school, you're talking about an average of like 8 mile an hour winds. So one of the things that I'm grateful for that school is you had to learn how to spot, and you had to learn how to freaking call wind. Yeah. And if you didn't learn the wind and read mirage, you were going home. And we had a huge failure rate in that. But it was definitely some crazy times in that. Yeah. You mind if I talk about the?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, again, this goes back to Mike's character. One of the most impactful moments, for lots of different reasons, but one of the most impactful moments. So we were shooting. I don't know what we were doing, but what I do remember, I don't know what range we were shooting at or what drills we were doing at the time. What I do remember is we were doing this thing where one person would shoot, one person would spot, and they'd be like, change over. And you had to like switch real fast. And what I was shooting at the time, and what I was supposed to do was throw the bolt up. And I didn't. And I got in a hurry and jumped on the spot and scope. And then Mike jumped down there on the gun and was moving the gun around, and suddenly, a round goes off. And it was the loudest sound And it was, everything was safe. We were pointing the guns down range and everything else. But I just remember being there frozen and just like, oh God. And then suddenly it just got all quiet. It just got completely quiet. And suddenly like down the range, not down range, but down the line, one of the instructors was like, who the, like, so the dude comes running over here and I'm like, Laird, tell him anything. like at that point, I was like, it's over. We're going home. We gotta go. I was like, tell him you heard something. Tell him you thought he said fire. Like I'm like trying to whisper this stuff. I'm in a panic. And Laird, being the guy that he does, as soon as the guy comes over, as soon as the instructor comes over, he's like, did you just AD? He's like, yeah, I did. And I'll tell you, that stuck with me almost more than anything. I'll never forget. I remember that as vivid as I remember 10 minutes ago. And I was like, yeah, we're going home, but that was ballsy. And again, that just goes back to Laird's character. And that was a learning, teachable moment for me. And again, seriously, there's been many times in my life when, it would have been easier to tell something that wasn't true. And I go back to that moment and I'm like, be a man and face it up. And Laird exemplified that. And he did that on many occasions. And again, he's a guy that leads by example. And, that's another one of the reasons that I'm here visiting him. But it was a huge moment and I'll never forget it. And if you don't take anything else from this video, own up to something you do, and hopefully it turned out. And it did turn out. He was like, well, as soon as Laird said that, because he was ready for a denial, and he was all amped up. And as soon as Laird said, hey, you know what, I did it, like completely de-escalated. He just like, okay, well, guys, you got to be careful. These triggers are light. Da 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 da. He's like, normally, I'd probably send you home, but you're all right. And we went back to shooting.
And I shared with you last night when we were talking that, something that was like burned in my memory was I think it was a Ranger bat instructor, and he had passed SEAL sniper course, and so he was well respected. I remember he literally the very next iteration. He'd been a Soda. The very next iteration, he literally stood right in front of our gun and just stood there, like basically communicating, like, "Hey, man, I still believe in you."
And just for the record, bolt was up, gun was cleared, all that good stuff. But it was he was making a point, like, "Hey, look, let it go," because to say that we were rattled.
I was rattled, like
I was, I felt like I knew that I had completely set him up for failure. And, I don't even know that his whether it was a bag, we had a bunch of stuff. We were shooting on bags. I don't even know that we were shooting off bipods at the time. I think we were shooting off bags. Anyways, it was a bad situation, and it was 99% my fault. And, it was just.
No, I mean, I did it.
Well, I helped you do it for sure. It was definitely a team effort.
I will say this, Gary. I didn't say this before, but the only reason that I passed sniper school was because you were my sniper buddy in there with me, and I think the two of us being together helped me out tremendously. I think I would have failed early in that course if you weren't there. Just super motivated, detailed, focused, and just makes you want to elevate your game.
Yeah, I think. I would have said the exact same thing. Like, we were very serious. We took our job seriously. We were all in. And, the last thing that we wanted to do was go back to our platoon and say that we misrepresented our platoon. And that goes back to the leadership that we had at the platoon, the camaraderie that we had. And, folks, for those of you that don't know me, later on I went SF, and I did 3 more combat tours after that. Did a lot of really cool things, but nothing was ever as close as the experiences and the friendships and the camaraderie and the real team cohesiveness that I had with our scout platoon. And I still talk to some of those guys, and even guys in our scout platoon. We still talk to them every now and then. But again, there's some of those key people that you end up building relationships with that make an impact on you, and anyways, Mike's one of those guys for me for sure. So we ended up finished the sniper school. Somehow we passed. It was something like that was not an easy school to pass because of the winds and everything else. It was like, I want to say it was like somewhere around 50-60% of failure rate. There's very few of the guys actually passed. There were some guys that didn't pass because of PT test.
That was the other thing.
Yeah.
Because we just weren't able to do as much PT as normal because we, had an op tempo.
Yeah. We were outside the wire like nonstop. We were running, and that was back in the good old days. We're like, me and Larry were talking about this the other day. Whether it was on the recon side, or on the sniper side, this is the early days when people still believed in reconnaissance, still people believed in the sniper mission and our capabilities and everything that we brought to the battlefield, which is a lot. But what happened was somewhere later on down the road, there was a sniper team that was compromised and a couple of guys were killed. So they started really restricting movement. But at the time, here we are like E2, E3s, we're going out in E4s, going out on like 3 and 4 man teams, sometimes 2-man teams. The sniper missions later that we did were 2-man teams a lot of times, going out, getting infilled somewhere, walking another 10 clicks, finding a hide site, and we're just sitting there for days.
With just a load bearing vest and like that's it.
Yeah, we were walking too much and trying to stay low profile where we weren't, whether we were supposed to or not. We didn't bring body armor. We had a lot of times it was just the M24, R2 M4s. Sometimes we had to carry the Barrett, depending on the mission set and what we were doing, which was never fun to lunk around. Things noisy, heavy. That was that. But we were talking about, some of the stories that we had from, and folks, I'm sure I've already been doing it, but I'm going to share some of these pictures with you. These pictures are just gold. And that was a cool thing too, because I had a SD card that I bought. I bought a digital camera, a very early digital camera, there in 2004. Like there was a bazaar at where the sniper school was being located. There was a battalion there. Yeah. A battalion or company unit, something like that. But anyways, they had a bazaar outside there where you could buy stuff. I bought one of those and took a bunch of pictures, hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and that SD card ended up being corrupted. So I lost a lot of pictures that were pretty meaningful. So when I showed up and Mike had all these pictures, it was really cool to, it was really cool. It was actually pretty emotional to see this and then to see this old sniper book. And again, I'll throw some pictures in from this itself. We took some damn good data.
Yeah. I think we were certainly more detailed at sniper school than when we got back and did kind of normal training.
Yeah.
A little more time to capture it. But.
Well, I will say that, one of the things, by the time we got back to, we redeployed from Iraq, we had a guy take over as the sniper squad leader. What was his position?
SSO?
Whatever. Yeah, sniper something officer.
SEO.
Sniper equipment. So that was basically an E6 or whatever. But really, it was the team leader. So I came back as a team leader, sniper team leader. Laird got a team, and I don't remember who else was running the other team.
Was it McAndrews?
No, I think it was it Mazir?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So anyways, but I will tell you, like we brought another level to the sniper section at that point. Like we were on it. We trained our guys well. We demanded excellence, and I think we brought another level. I didn't see that level of sophistication or intensity with the sniper teams prior to us. So that was cool. I think we got to kind of reinvigorate the sniper section and really took our job seriously and had a lot of fun with it. And again, best times of my life. We were talking about some stories. We were swapping some stories from Iraq, though. I don't know. What was some of the things that you brought up, Mike?
Well, what was interesting, and it's neat sharing with you, is that things that you remember, I didn't remember, but it kind of like jogged it in my memory.
Yeah.
And that was just a fun back and forth because, we talked about camel spiders and scorpions and pitting them against each other in battle. And then we had this one co-event had a scorpion named Spetsna. It was like this victorious gladiator of a scorpion. It had won against every other scorpion we put it up against. And one time we dropped, I think, like 4 camel spiders at one time, and it killed them all. And so we're like, this guy is unreal, this Spetsna scorpion. I bet he can kill a desert rat. And so we got a desert rat, dropped it in there, and the desert rat just jumped up, landed on the tail, and bit the tail off. And we were just crushed. We're like, Spetsna, no! And so then we had to get revenge for Spetsna. So we got some type of viper and put it in there. And of course the viper gets the desert rat. And then we were at the pinnacle. There was nothing else to do. So we just lit the viper on fire and called it a day. But stuff like that. And then, the rat at the fort.
Yeah. So I remember one time, and this goes back to, all the missions, we were running missions constantly. All of those kind of blend together a little bit. And we weren't working on a lot of sleep. It was rough times. We were hard dudes, and really just kids, but we were hard dudes, and we were running a high mission tempo and doing some serious missions. And but it was the downtime that we just came up. There's some like goofy pictures in here. Apparently, we spent like a good two cameras, disposable cameras full of us just like fake fighting. Like the whole platoon, like come with these stupid poses where we're like fighting, and I don't even remember what that was all about. Oh, here's a sweet kick. That's really that's a scout ninja kick right there. We'll teach that in a level 14 class somewhere. But just some really, really cool times. And just we were just the stuff that we ended up doing to keep ourselves busy. It was either you were either going 100% out there hoping you didn't die, or you were like bored out of your mind and had nothing to do. So you ended up filling your days with absolute silliness. And again, a bunch of young kids that, doing what we do. But I remember one morning waking up and I go to put my boots on, and, any good soldier shakes out his boot, but you never expect anything to happen. I shook out my boot, and this large rat comes flying out of there. And next thing you know, we have the whole scout platoon we're up there, and the snipers, we're like trying to corner this rat. We finally get this rat. Somehow he ends up it was
like a gallon Gatorade bottle.
It was this big Gatorade bottle, but it was like full of nothing. It was like 3/4 of the way full of like dip spit and cigarette butts.
They were trying to fill it. Like their goal was to fill.
I forgot that's right. It's so disgusting.
The commitment it would take to fill that is so absurd.
We ended up, throwing this rat inside of this thing, like shaking it up. And we saw to the point where it wasn't moving. So we ended up dumping this thing out. And I remember somebody was like literally doing chest compressions on this thing. And then it comes back to life.
It literally did. It's unbelievable.
It comes back to life. So we throw it back in there.
Can you imagine just drowning in dip spit?
Could you imagine touching a rat? And we get it back out. We try to resuscitate it, but it had passed. It had passed.
And that was just an average day.
That was an average day. What started the whole scorpion fighting thing was, I remember I was I was looking around. I think I was getting ready to go to guard duty, and some interesting stories of guard duty.
Yeah.
So I was getting ready to go to guard. There was we were occupying about 2/3 of this fort, but there was that whole back wall and rooms and stuff that was completely empty. It was dark. Dark as piss. Well, I remember walking through there and I hear, I'm like, what is that? I'm like, just stand there for a second here. And I'm like, what? So I turn the light on, I'm looking around, and I hear, and I look over, and there's this scorpion that's, I don't know, probably that big. It's black. And I'm like, oh my God, he's like 2 feet from my foot. And I'm like, So I'm like, oh, I'm catching the scorpion. So I don't remember how I captured it, but we ended up capturing him, and that was the first time that we had the scorpion fight, a camel spider, and the scorpion won. And I think there were some more. There were some more of the gladiator battles that we had with couple of things. But I had remembered seeing this documentary about scorpions, how they could freeze them and then bring them, and then if you let them thaw out, they'll come back, they'll reanimate, right? So I'm like, man, I gotta try it. So we had a freezer, and I remember in the documentary, they had literally put the scorpion in this block of ice. And now I'm sure that they had frozen the scorpion, put it in some water, and then froze it or something along those lines. I didn't do that. I threw it right in a bucket of water basically, and then put it in the freezer, and then like took it out like 4 hours later, and surprise, it never did anything. Even after some scorpion chest compressions, never came back.
Couldn't get it back.
Couldn't get that back. Yeah. So what were some other things that happened?
One of the things that I look back on that first deployment was that there was just nothing there, like entertainment wise. I think that's why that one was so unique, because we didn't have TVs. I mean, there was nothing there, and again, we were out in front of logistics a lot of the time. And even at the fort when we got set up, there was just nothing to do. And so I think it was a unique time because there was no other form of entertainment than just being there with guys and coming up with random things to do. And so, I remember I was telling a story, Harrison, we were on burning poop on the top of the fort. So, got the JP8 in there or whatever.
Yeah, so let's back up and explain that to people.
This a little.
So on top of our fort, we had built these latrines, and they were nothing but this big this big plywood box with holes in them. And so the funny thing is, you'd literally be on top of this fort, sitting there butt naked, taking a crap with like 3 other dudes, and it was like normal. Like you didn't even think anything about it. But so what was underneath the holes that we were crapping in were these, like, probably the bottom third of a 50-gallon. It's about that much. And what you'd do is you'd pull all that out. You'd pour some JPA, some fuel in there, diesel fuel essentially, and you light it on fire. But it didn't stop there. You had to stir that stuff. Mm-hmm. So you had a metal picket, and you would just stir it, and it's like boiling and like. So literally, I remember stirring one day, and it was like blue, and like I was like, ah! This big freaking glob of gelatinous poo stew freaking right on my lip. It was bad. So anyways, yeah, you had to sit there and stir that. We had to go up there and just like 3 or 4 of us would be up there and talking crap and stirring this and that in JPA. It'd take like 2 hours to burn a bucket of this stuff down to what was considered the standard, and then you'd put it back. But so that's what he's talking about. So Harrison.
Yeah, so Harrison's up there, and we're, I guess we're the 2 guys that are doing it for today, and so we're stirring it, and Harrison gets this bright idea there was rubble on top of the fort, right? 'Cause there was some damage from, I'm sure, previous battles, not our battles, but I don't know, Iraq.
I think they just looted that place. They like tore it up, like they had ripped all the electrical out of it and stuff like that. Once that place had become unoccupied, I don't think it actually had any like battle damage, but there was definitely lots and lots of rubble. It was all destroyed.
That was one thing we can talk a little bit about, is just the looting that occurred all throughout Baghdad and all the Saddam's palaces and all that. But just to close out on the burning poop story. So Harrison, I think it was Harrison, got the idea that I'm going to take this huge boulder and I'm going to throw it as high as I can in the air and land it in the burning poop. And I remember thinking, this is a horrible idea. But sure enough, he finally hit it right, and just burning poop just exploded everywhere. It's the absurdity of doing that when you're the guy that has to clean it up. Like, how dumb.
Yeah. I remember one time we were out on a recon. We'd been out several days, and we were getting ready to exfil. And I remember we were exfilling at night. We had to walk, I don't know how long it was, but several clicks to get to our exfil point. And the sun was coming up. So we ended up diving into this, I think it was like an abandoned house. All I remember is there being like maybe like 5-foot walls around it. And I remember we were like in this like back corner of this wall, and we were all just sitting there talking and stuff like that. And there was like this lizard crawling around, and I ended up grabbing this lizard. And I remember just holding it and looking at it. And one of them were like, "Gary, dare you to bite the head off that thing." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, and bit the head off. I can't believe I didn't get sick, but again, that's another one of those
craziest things.
Yeah.
Those memories. I didn't remember that. And as soon as you said, I'm like, yep, I remember that. That's a cool thing about, being around, particularly guys that were there for that first or maybe second deployment, because everything was just so new, those experiences.
Yeah. So, as far as like I guess one of the few that I'd be willing to talk about, but the scaredest I had ever been, there was a retrans site. And what I mean by that was there was a hill, a large hill, and to get radio reach everywhere in our area of operations, we put up a large antenna on this hill, and there was fighting positions around it. So we were rotating through the companies. You'd have to go up there and basically pull guard duty on this antenna site for a few days, and you're just a sitting target out there.
I mean, we were like 4 or 5 guys. I mean, it was a team, right?
At most, it might have been 6 guys. It wasn't very many. I don't remember who all was up there at the time. I remember Turbyfield was there as he was still the scout, one of the scout squad leaders. Anyways, so there was maybe 4 or 5 of us, and we're just sitting there. We have a guy, 1 or 2 outdoors, and there was like this little wooden shack, and we were in there like 4 or 5 guys huddled around like one computer screen. I remember we were watching something on that screen, and all of a sudden you hear cuckoo. We're like, what was that? And next thing you know, whoever was on guard duty, you hear cuckoo, and he comes running. He's like, hey, we're getting mortared. We're like, what? So we throw all our gear on, and we have fighting positions. We have a reaction plan, and there's these fighting positions. There's basically a berm around that area. And I remember to get to the one that I was supposed to go to, I had to go over this berm. And I remember just seeing a flash right on, it felt like that flash was like right where that fighting position was. It was further away, but that was the realization to me that, because there's nothing you can do when you're getting mortared. The same thing goes with getting an IED, but at least, an IED or something like that takes place. It happens right then and there. You don't have time to think about it or react or anything else. But that's when it dawned on me that, like, it doesn't matter how good you are, for the guys that come home and the guys that don't, or the guys that are injured and the guys that aren't, you can have all the training, you can do all the right things, and a lot of it is just luck. And the thing is, like, I just remember thinking, like, there's nothing I can do. Like, I don't have a target. There's nothing I can do. And I think that was the most frightening thing of all, was realizing that, there's just not much you can do. That was genuinely the most afraid that I have ever been. Yeah. But anyways, got over the fighting position. We saw the truck. We put our thermals on. We saw the truck that they had jumped out. You remember, you could see the highway right there. They had come off the highway, drove in. There's a long path that we would take our Humvees, and then it'd come up around the hill, and we could see the truck. And we started shooting at that vehicle, even with the 50 cal, and by 50 cal I mean the Barrett. We didn't have any. I don't think we had any belt feds up there, which we should have. But anyways, we didn't have any belt feds up there, and we took some shots of them. They ended up running off, and none of the rounds impacted anything specific, but it wasn't effective fire, but it was effectively scared the crap out of me. I know that.
Absolutely.
For sure. What else?
Well, I think you started by just talking about, our time over there, and, there's a lot of debate about, was it worth it, or what the mission was, and regardless of someone's opinion on that, the formation of character, the being around the guys and those stories, and it changes you forever in a way that was incredibly positive for me, and I'm very blessed to meet guys like Gary. I mean, just literally haven't seen him in 15 years, and we can have one conversation, and it's just cracking up. It's hilarious, reconnecting, telling stories, and those were important times in my life, and will be not only from my life but also my boys' life.
Yeah.
And kind of the next generation. Some of the wisdom that we got and experiences that we got, we hopefully share some of that with the next generation.
And the values that I think that you end up, you know, the values that you end up taking out of that, and the life lessons I think that you take out of that. And that's, you know, I was talking to Larry before we did this video, and I was telling him how, you know, I was like, you know, I really think that there's a message here that we need to share, and I wanted to share this. This isn't for, like, you know, YouTube views or anything else. Number one, I wanted to kind of preserve some of these stories and just, again, for posterity's sake, and to share some of this with the world. But also, there's some people out there, whether you're former military, whether you're dealing with depression or PTSD or, you know, all these other things. One of the biggest things that I took from, you know, going into the military and going up into the areas that, number one, you know, these people that are in scout platoon, like, oh my God, like, I'll never be scout. Or SF, oh God, I'll never be SF. All these things that you end up looking back and saying, hey man, I'm proud that I accomplished that. I'm proud of the mission that we did and the things that we built and the brotherhood that we built, because we were guys that A, we knew we couldn't quit, and B, we definitely wouldn't quit on each other, right? And that was something to learn from. And I think that's ultimately, you know, the message, I guess, that I'm trying to. Number one, I think people need to hear positive stories about Iraq and Afghanistan. I know there's a lot of people feeling like that it wasn't worth anything, that maybe, you know, we were sent there by politicians and probably for the wrong reasons and all these other things, but it was worth it. It was worth it in a lot of different ways. And there's lots of takeaways there. And what I would say to those of you that, if you're dealing with PTSD or maybe, again, not in the military, one of the things that I always heard is all you got to do is not quit. That's all you got to do. And that was true. Like, after that, I ended up going SF, going to selection, and I heard all these crazy stories about selection and all of these things. And you know, it was something that somebody else, some elite person that 1 in a million could do, and you couldn't do it. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go try. I'm probably not going to pass. And ultimately, all you had to do was not quit. And then you'd be surprised how you end up excelling at those things. And life's the same way, right? Like you know, I love to see that Laird and his family are doing well, and I talk to many people that I catch up with, and they're all doing well. But there's definitely some people out there struggling. You know, we lost. I know we lost a couple folks from this deployment from suicide, and you know, you got so much to be proud of, and you got people that care about you more than you realize. And, you know, there's your best days are ahead of you. They're not behind you, and just don't quit. You know, that's all I really know to say with that is there's a lot of good that came out of all the madness. And I was telling Larry too, you know, if I was had to do it all over again, if I was told, hey, you know what, you're going to go repeat the exact same thing, but you still have a chance of dying, still coming back all jacked up, mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically, would I do it all over again? Knowing that, hey, we're not going to come out of there winning anything. We're probably not going to, you know, complete the objectives that we went there thinking that we were going to complete. We're not going to make the impact that we thought we were going to make. And then we're going to get pulled out of Afghanistan and just give everything over to, you know, what we know to be terrorists the entire time. So there's a lot of negative to focus on. I think there's a lot of people that do focus on the negative. But again, my big takeaway from our conversation yesterday was like, I left, you know, talking about all these things, happy and excited. And those are the things I remember the most. And yeah, there's lots of really crappy times where you're going days without sleep and you think you're going to die, and you don't really think that you're going into a combat situation and you don't think you're going to come home, or hey, you know the guy next to you is probably not going to come home, or you're going to have to deal with them getting maimed or something like that. The reality is I do it all over again. And I'm proud of that time, proud of the men I met, proud of the characters and the life lessons I learned out of there and the experience that I got out of that. And, you know, it's a story that needs to be shared, and I want to share that, if nothing else, just for our families. I think I've never had these conversations with anybody. I haven't talked about any of that stuff. Again, not because it's painful, just because it's kind of lacking context, I guess. You know what I mean? It's like, what I, in the middle of a dinner party, hey guys, guess what I did in Iraq? And, I don't really even know how to broach that subject. And then if, I've had family members ask, what happened over there? Well, what do you want to know? Like, I don't know where to begin or to end, or it almost seems like a pointless conversation, but it's not pointless. There's a lot of great things that happened. And I think the country is ultimately better for it. Maybe it's those lessons learned that we don't repeat some of the mistakes that we made going forward. But all that blood and treasure was not for nothing. It was for something. And
that's right. And I would just add, I think this interaction and others that I've had, I think it's important for us to reach out to our other brothers out there that life happens, we get busy and we move on to different things, but this has been so healthy and good and just so blessed to be able to link up with you. And I'm so glad you reached out, but I think we need to do that more.
I agree.
To other guys that you serve with, and just let them know you care about them and try to link up.
Yeah. So, for those of you servicemen and women out there, if you haven't done it in a while, you need to link up with some people. I'll tell you what, it's been extremely therapeutic for me. It's been definitely a blessing for me to talk to Laird. And it also reminds us of what we're missing out on, right? We do get busy with life, and we haven't talked to each other in 15 years. And that's 15 years wasted. I hope, hopefully we're making some plans where we can get our families together and, all the kids can get together and do some toddler fights or something. We can put that on YouTube or something. But, reach out to those people and let them, because the reality is once you get disconnected from the military, you feel really alone, and you feel like people can't relate to you, and they can't. And that's true to a large degree. And a lot of people out there don't know how to assimilate, feeling again that they'll never, there's this weird dichotomy of some people, sometimes you feel like those were the worst days, but sometimes you felt those were the best days, and you'll never get to experience those things again. And it does. You feel lonely. You go through, all kinds of different things. There's a lot of people out there suffering from alcoholism, self-medication, going to the VA, getting lots of overprescribed on medication. So there's lots of things going on. And I know there's several people that I know that lost a war with depression and ended up taking their own life, and that's just a shame. Because again, there's so much more ahead of you, and I know I'm going to commit to reaching out to more of the people that I've had both good and bad relationships. You definitely walk out of the military, I know I did, with good and bad relationships with people. But you know what? At the end of the day, some of the people that you end up having bad relationships with, number one, you end up being hesitant to reach out to those folks, and chances are that they'd like to hear from you. And if they don't, at least you tried. But we definitely need to do a better job taking care of one another.
I agree.
Well, Laird, thanks for doing this. I think it was good, man.
Good, man. I appreciate you lying about me and being overly kind, but this is a special guy right here. And I feel like the brotherhood and the bond that we formed 15, 16, 17 years ago, whatever it was.
Almost 20.
Is it really? Golly. But you guys know this guy. He's awesome, and I love him. He's a brother.
Love it too, man. Well, folks, I don't know. I hope that was something informative, helpful. I know it was different, but I do think there's people out there that need to hear it. And again, I don't know. Anyways, I hope that was helpful. I hope that was informative. And make sure you're taking care of people that you know, regardless of whether they're in the military or not. Make sure you're reaching out and maintaining those relationships and doing better at making yourself available to other people, because I'm telling you, man, your impact on people is more than they'll ever know. They won't tell you. I remember thinking many times, I regret not telling Laird, the impact that he'd made on my life in many different ways. And there's another 20 people out there that I owe that to as well. So let somebody know that you care about them. Let somebody know that they made an impact on you. And anyways, till next time, stay armed, stay ready, and we'll talk to you soon.
coming, but I'm prepared.